Very good noon, everyone. Um, I'm Dr. Deva Khurana on behalf of CTU University School of Law and CRC Cell. I would like to extend my hearty welcome to our esteemed guest for today, Ms. Sanjana Mishra. She's an expert lawyer, corporate lawyer amongst us, who would be talking about how to plan for startup and all the legal and ethical issues that are involved regarding the startups. A very warm welcome, ma'am. I would not take much of your time. We are already lagging behind already. So I would like to just give the platform to you. And I hope the same, because startups today, in today's time, it has become a very well-known name. And events like Shark Tanks and other things, they have rather made us all think about what startups are. So over to you, ma'am, not taking much of the time. Again, warm welcome.
Thanks so much, Dr. Divya. It was so generous of you. Yes, I've been working in corporate sector for past 5 years, and with the experience that I have while working for startup around 2 years, I would be very glad to share the information with respect to same. So, if you can please come to the next slide. Hello. Yeah, thank you. So anyone would like to give a brief about what is actually a startup? Anyone? Okay, so I will just start. So can you please change the next slide? Yeah. So idea of the startup, it's actually wonderful. So if you see, the word startup is relatively new, but the concept of startup as such is not really new, because all the big players that we see today were all startup at their initial stage or at that some point of time. Now, because of this culture of growth and more of the employment, more and more countries are providing an inclusive environment for startup to grow and to compete with other big players. If you see in India as well, the startup ecosystem was basically realized somewhere around in 1991. But the real spike in startup, it was seen after the 2008 economic recession. So now India is among the most startup friendly nation in the world. Just a fun fact, not really a fun fact, just a fact that in 2021 itself, there are 42 startups which has been recognized as a unicorn companies. So anyone would like to tell me what a unicorn company is? Okay, no problem. So unicorn company is basically a company which has its valuation of $1 billion or more. And initially, if you see, like at the very beginning, when the companies used to start, to get to these valuation, it used to take somewhere around 12 to 15 years. And now those startups are doing the same thing within 5 to 6 years of their incorporation. So it's a huge change that we are seeing after the recession. And now I would give you a brief idea what the startup is in a general parlance. So startup are basically a company, you can say a company, it's a venture, or it's just a project that is focused in a single product or services that the founder wants to bring to the market, and they do not have a set up business model like the big organization, and they keep working through trial and error, and they doesn't have fully developed business model yet. So what they do is they have one idea, they start working on it, they test and try that what would be the company structure and other requirement, and then decide what will be the structure of a startup. Now, India realized the importance of startup in 2015 again and launched a Startup India initiative in 2015. So the definition that it has set up, the Indian government has set up in the startup initiative in 2015 is a startup is anything which has its valuation less than 10 crore, and it basically a startup is a startup within 10 years of its incorporation, And one main thing that any entity, if it has been demerged or if there is any reorganization of a company, that will not be considered a startup. So startup is something which is a new company. It has some innovation to it and giving a unique solution. So for example, today if I just open a business and I say this is a startup, no, this will not be startup unless that business that I'm opening up has a unique approach, unique method to a already existing problem. So that is how we distinguish between a startup and a normal organization. Pankaj, can you please change to the next slide? Yeah, so now coming to business ethics. What is actually business ethics? So business ethics, it is actually a form of applied professional ethics that examines the moral or ethical problem that will arise in a business environment. To put in simple word, business ethics is most commonly discussed while carrying on a company's business. The concerned area would be fraud, the sustainability of the agreement, bribery, discrimination, or corporate governance. So these are the pointers that we discuss, or these are the ideas around which we discuss about business ethics. So why business ethics is important? There are two major reasons for that. One being, any company or any organization for that matter, if they wish to conduct a business, they has to have some core values by which they will be operating. Otherwise what will happen, that if a company is working without any core values, the business decision would be taken from a person to person basis, and those decision of a person or an employee which has been taken by the individual discretion, it may or may not align to the goal that a company has in mind. So while we start planning up, once we have decided that okay, this is the idea for which we want to our startup for, then there are four initial steps which I personally think is very important. Is first is recognize the ethical dilemma at the very beginning stage. Like for example, today you have decided that okay, this is the idea that I want to work on, and for this I will have to constantly interact with some government officials. So in that case, do I want to give bribery to those government official to expedite my getting of license, or do I want to carry it honestly? So deciding it at very initial stage helps you in a sense that it will determine that in future how the business will be carried on. What, because the legal implication of the ethical values are extremely high. Also, one more important reason that why ethical concept or why core value has to be there is because if you see now, there are bigger organizations now, even the foreign companies, they want the company that they're doing their business with has to have certain policies regarding, let's say, fraud. So while I was working with one of my previous organization, all the foreign companies that we used to interact with, they had specifically made a point that if they are taking or if we are supplying something to them, we have to have policy for what is our policy for fraud, we have to have policy for bribery, we have to have policy for discrimination, for corporate governance. So all of this is, all the bigger organizations see that as a startup or as a normal company also, the ethic or the core value is being followed. So that is why after recognizing what are the ethical dilemmas that we could follow, we need to define the core values. Now those core values are basically heart and soul of your business. You need to have those core values in hiring practices, in business operation, in your company culture, and even while deciding your business strategy. So just to give an example, while I was working with Aditya Birla Group, there the core values were integrity, commitment, passion, and seamlessness and speed. So everything that we were doing, every interaction that we had with different departments, we used to make sure that everything is being disclosed, everything is done with 100% of the commitment. There is a seamlessness within different departments, because legal team is usually seen as a hindrance to the business, saying that legal team brings a lot of complication and stuff like that. So a seamlessness, that passion is required, so that we are open about every step that we are doing, to have that approach that everything is happening in a speed that is required by organization. Then when I say integrating ethics into hiring, what does it mean? Today, let's say I have a requirement of a personnel, because I am in urgency, I will employ anyone, but that shouldn't be the case. We always and always should employ a person or an employee whose core values are similar to those core values of your organization. Because what may happen that today, if I have, let's say, employed someone, and tomorrow a business decision has to be made, and that employee's core values are different from the organization, so the person might act against the interest of organization, and that is something we would not want. Now, now the last point would be creating a culture of dissent and openness. What does it basically means is, every employee in your organization should have a different point of opinion. Because usually what happens in a startup, that founders, they are just blinded by their own enthusiasm and their creative vision, which surround themselves, and they want every employee who say yes to them and don't really challenge their practices. This shouldn't be happening. Why? Because creating a culture of openness, it's a very good way to establish internal checks and balances. So having that culture of openness and having that dissent is a must. Pankaj, can you please move to the next slide? Now I'm basically dealing from here onwards the legal aspect of starting up a startup. I will not be going in very detail. I'll just briefly tell you the step and what are the requirements for that. So today, let's say now you have decided that you want to open up a startup. Once you have decided, the idea is finalized between the founders and everything is done, the next step is deciding what would be the name of your business, because of course without that business name, nothing is going to happen. So it is a very essential step that a business name is chosen which reflects the ideology of the startup that we are planning to. And second point that we have to make sure is that it is not already claimed by some other entity. So to check whether the name that I am planning to go ahead with is not taken by some other entity, there are two simple steps to that. One step is just doing a Google search and seeing whether that name has already been taken or not. And second step would be going to the trademark register, which has all the trademark or all the names, brand names, trade name, domain names that has already been used by some other business. So after doing this small two-step check, you will have your business name decided. Now, once you have decided the name of your business, second step would be, what is the business structure that we want? So now when I say business structure, to start a business, we need to have a specific business type, which means it could be like your startup could be either a sole proprietorship, it could be either a company under Companies Act 2013, it could be a partnership under Partnership Act, or it could be limited liability partnership under 2008 Act. So a sole proprietorship, as the name suggests, is a one-person company, and all the activities are mostly carried out by that person. When I say partnership, it is basically two parties coming together in a partnership and starting their business. Coming to limited liability company, a limited liability company is one in which all the partners have their limited contribution and all their liabilities are limited to that contribution. Then company, as all of us are aware, comes under Companies Act 2013, and have a whole lot of plethora of compliances that comes with the company. So each business type that I just talked about, being proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, and a private company, it comes with their own set of requirement and regulation that business need to pay attention to them before incorporating the business. So depending upon what is our requirement, what is the requirement of the founders, we need to decide on structure. I will just carve out few pointers as in what is the difference. Like for example, when we talk about registration, so for a proprietorship, registration is not required. For a partnership, registration is not required. But when it comes to limited liability company and a private liability company, the registration is mandatory under Limited Liability Partnership Act 2013 and Companies Act 2013 respectively. Then coming to legal status as such, a proprietorship doesn't have a legal status. In a sense, it is not a separate entity from the person itself. So it means the founder of a sole proprietorship is completely and 100% responsible for all the liabilities of the proprietorship. Now coming to partnership, in partnership it is also not recognized as a separate entity, and all the partners who have established the partnership firm will be responsible for all the liabilities. Whereas when it comes to limited liability company and private limited company, their liability is limited towards the contribution that they have made in case of limited liability company, and the liability is limited to the share capital in case of a private limited company. So there are many more criteria basis which we decide whether we want to have a proprietorship, whether we want to have a partnership, we want to have a limited liability company, or we want to have a private liability company. Now, once we have decided that, okay, this is going to be our formal structure, once that has been decided, there is something called founders agreement. What is a founder agreement? Is basically it's an agreement or a document that will have all the important details of the members of the business. For example, that founders agreement will have in detail laid out the rights and liabilities of the company, the ownership of each founder, the responsibilities of the each founder, what happens in case of dispute resolution, or any other term which the founders within themselves want to be bound by in future. So hence, having a well drafted agreement with all the necessary detail will have a solid foundation in the journey, especially in case of any disagreement between the founders. So that is why the founders agreement is a must for a startup. Then coming to understanding taxation and accounting law. So as we are all aware that taxation is a part and parcel of every business. So there are broad varieties of tax such as central tax, state tax, and in some cases there could be some local taxes as well that may be applicable to a certain business. So depending upon which sector the startup is, there would be different taxes that will be applicable. So knowing beforehand, like for example, in case of a proprietorship, the taxes that are applicable is as per the Income Tax Act, and similar with the partnership firm also. But when it comes to limited liability and a company, there are many corporate taxes that they have to pay by virtue of being an organization. And also all the startup should make sure that their business accounting is proper, their books of accounts are proper. All the founders, they need to audit them from time to time in order to ensure that all the accounting and taxation rules are adhered to. So even the founders may think that it's just beginning, we are a small organization, we don't really want to follow all the accounting system, but it is a very it could be inviting a lot of legal notices if not adhered to. So compliances with all the taxation and understanding all the taxation and accounting laws in the jurisdiction that the startup is planning to open is very essential. Pankaj, can you move to the next slide? Now, in pre-incorporation stages, we decided that what is the name of the business, what is the structure that we want to go ahead with. We decided what will be the tax structure, what it looks like. Looks like now is the stage or where we will decide to incorporate the startup. So now that incorporation comes in, it comes in very handy, as in now everything has been made online. So incorporating the startup is really easy. What exactly we need to do is, let's say we have decided on, we want to go ahead with the company. So we need to file an application with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs with the all the required documents, and we will just need to get registered and we will receive a incorporation certificate. It's as simple as that. Then coming to registering with Startup India Initiative. What exactly it is now, after the Indian government recognized the Startup Initiative of 2015. They said that after, if a particular startup is complying with the criteria that has been set up and which we discussed in our first slide also, if a startup is fulfilling those conditions, then the startup has the option to also register themselves with this initiative. What happens with this initiative is that we get the recognition of DPIT. What DPIT stands for is Department for Promotion of Industrial and Internal Trade. So we receive a DPIIT recognition as well. What happens with the registration of startup with the startup initiative is, along with the certificate and along with the recognition that a startup has received from DPIT, this recognition will also help in availing a number of benefits like tax exemption for 3 consecutive years, some high quality access to intellectual property resources, relaxation in public procurement norms, and some self certifications as well. So going for the step of registering with Startup India Initiative is really crucial step, or though not mandatory, will help a lot to avail all the benefits that a startup can avail. Now we have incorporated our startup. We have registered it with Startup India Initiative. The next step would be applying for business licenses. So it is usually thought that once we have registered our company, we can just start operating a company. So that's not the case. There are licenses which are very integral to running any business. So depending upon what is the nature of the business, there are many different licenses that are applicable. So I would like to categorize them in two parts. One is general registration, one is specialized registration. So general registration would include registration under goods and service tax, registration of permanent account number, registration of tax account number, bank account, getting a registration license under Shops and Establishment Act. So this particular license is taken when a organization or when a startup has decided to take up a physical premises. That's when this Shops and Establishment license is necessary. So these are your general registration. Now coming to specialized registration. Specialized registration could be depending upon what area you're working on. Like for example, you are a starter working in a mining industry. So hello. Hello. Okay, I think somebody has their mic unmuted. So could you please unmute your mind? Oh, sorry, mute your mic. Okay. So, yeah, so all the specialized licenses comes with the type of industry that you're working in. For example, if you're working in a mining industry, so in that case, you will need to have licenses such as environment clearance, you need to have a forest clearance, you need to have a consent to operate, you need to have a consent to establish. If you are, let's say, working in a drug establishment, then you need to have a permission to manufacture under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So then depending upon the nature of the business, you will have certain specialized licenses as well. Now, this would be the last slide in which we are talking about what are the essential legal aspects apart from the steps that we have discussed on how to start a business. So, first and foremost of that will be ensuring the protection of intellectual property rights. So, what is intellectual property right? Intellectual property right is basically the secret sauce for most of the business today. So, we categorize intellectual property majorly in 5 forms. One is trademark, one is patent, one is copyright, one is trade secret, and other is industrial design. So each intellectual property comes with its own rights and duties and obligation. So like for example, what a trademark is any brand or logo or name by which a customer distinguishes goods and service of one entity from other entity. So that's what the trademark is. Now coming to copyright is basically a right which is given to author of the literary and artistic work. So that work could be as simple as a movie, it could be a book. That's what copyright is about. So copyright has specially been very core now for IP with the coming up of many technical education institutes. For example, at tech companies like Upgrad and Byju's, when they have their contents prepared for them. So all of it comes under the category of copyright. Now coming to patents, what a patent is basically that it's a non-obvious and a unique solution which has industrial application to problem that is already existing. So patent is usually technical in nature and is of extreme importance to some business because there are many business who actually operate just for patents. Then last would be industrial designs, and industrial designs are basically the outer structure of any design which is unique. For example, the Beetle car has got industrial design for its shape. The Coca-Cola bottle has industrial design for the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle, and so on. Sorry. Now, coming to trade secret has recently been gaining a lot of popularity because a trade secret is something so confidential that nobody wants to disclose it, and and all of the members of a company don't know it as well. For example, the trade secret of formula of Coca-Cola, only few founders of the company knows that what is the formula of a Coca-Cola, and all those founders, they don't even travel together because that's the importance and that's the crucial nature of the trade secret, that it can't even be discussed between two parties as such. So trade secret is something for which parties tries to ensure maximum confidentiality. Now, coming to adherence of labor law, as such, a startup has to comply with all the applicable laws, but I am giving most importance to labor law because it is an integral part, and no matter how small or big a company is, you need to comply with labor laws. So labor laws such as minimum wages, that the gratuity, the PF, weekly holidays, what could be the maternity benefit, the sexual harassment, payment of bonus, so stuff like that, they're all covered under labor laws, and every organization need to comply with labor law. So there is something that has to be make sure that labor laws are complied. Then coming to ensuring effective contract management. So contract is the crux of running any business, be it the smallest portion to the biggest portion. Contract is a part and parcel of running any business. So contract is there in all the aspects. So it is required first to ensure the smooth functioning of the work, and second, it is a great mechanism to ensure the recourse in case there is any disagreement or dispute or the other party has not performed its work. So it lays down the contractual relationship or the relationship between the parties. In the future, what will happen? Contract in India as such is usually governed by Indian Contract Act, but the relief can also be sought under the Specific Relief Act, apart from the relief that has been set out in the contracts. So ensuring effective contract management can be done first to make sure that we have a contract tool that take cares and have a repository of all the contracts that are there with the company. So at one place we know what are the contracts, when are they expiring, or if there is any particular compliance attached to a contract, then that has to be also complied with, and that a contract management tool will make sure that it reminds you every time there is some compliances that has to be done. So contract management again is a must. Now coming to employee agreement. As soon as a company has established, and employees would be first thing that a company would be hiring to make sure that what are the roles and responsibility apart from the jurisdiction where the work is done. And also, if I relate my employment contract with intellectual property right, so usually in an employment contract, what happens, we define terms of employment, that what will be the terms, we define the probation period if any, we define term of termination, that what happens, and we also try to safeguard our intellectual property by saying that during the services that an employee will be giving to organization, all the work that is being done by employee will belong to organization. So in that sense, when an employee is leaving the organization or a startup, he cannot come back and claim that this is something that I have worked on and hence it should be mine. So we make sure through our employment contract that our or the organization's intellectual property right is completely safeguarded. Now coming to non-disclosure agreement. So non-disclosure agreement is something which basically decides that if any confidential information is being shared by one party, so other party is not going to disclose it to third party. So there are restrictions that all the information that is being disclosed to one party is not being shared with any of the third party, and it ensures that the confidential information of the other party is remain protected. NDA, as if you see, is crucial at every stage. Even while at the time of discussing the idea, the founders can decide to have an NDA, so that if they have decided upon some idea, one of the founders, he doesn't go out and discussing it with everyone else. So there are NDAs which are signed even during the initial stages of discussion or negotiation between the founders itself, that what will be the idea, so that the idea itself is also protected and none of the party can disclose it to any third party. Then the next would be a website terms and conditions or privacy policy. So if a startup is now established and it will have a website, so it is mandatory to put a customized mandatory terms and conditions. Why this has gained a lot of importance in a recent era is coming up with the Data Protection Act in Europe. So once it had come, there is data protection bill ongoing in India as well, which once enacted, it will be basically that all the personal information that is being taken up by a company of its employee, it has to have a certain sort of protection, and in case of infringement, what will be the recourse. So that all will be decided in Data Protection Bill, which is currently, I think, pending with the government, with the parliament. So we need to have a website terms and condition. Bylaws and policy, they are just basically set of rules to make sure that the functioning of a startup is smooth and it is giving voice to everyone who is involved in the working. Now, last would be memorandum of understanding. So it's basically a formal conversation that a founder makes with maybe a supplier or a potential partner. So memorandum of understanding is different from a contract in a sense that MOU is just initial understanding and contract is a final binding contract. So MOU is not enforceable as such, and a contract would be enforceable in court of law. So that's how we distinguish between MOU And a contract and MOU is essential because parties would decide what will be the terms and condition while they are negotiating after they have decided the nature of the transaction. So I think this is it from my side. And if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. If anyone is having any questions, the floor can ask.
Yeah, I have one.
Sure.
I basically just wanted to know whether the startups which are having funding from India and the startups which are having funding from
Your voice is not audible. Startup.
I'm asking that the startups which are getting their funds from India and the startups which are getting their funds from abroad. So the startups which are getting India funds from India, would they get any advantage in comparison to the foreign funding startups?
So if you see the Startup India initiative, it has opened to foreign investors very recently, and as such, there is no distinction which has been made between the fundings as such, because it doesn't really matter. The importance would be given to a Indian company versus a foreign company. Like an Indian startup would be given certain benefits which will not be given to a foreign startup. But in terms of funding, if you say per se, as such, there is nothing except from certain restriction that may come up with the funding which are allowed versus not allowed as per the RBI guidelines.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Karthik. I also do have a question.
Sure.
I got a little confused with the startup initiative. Is the Startup India initiative is similar to what we have as incubation centers across India that
So-
government is saying?
Yeah, so incubation center, they are actually a part of the Startup India initiative only. So
All right.
what Startup India initiative is, it's basically first what it has done is it has decided what will be the eligibility criteria for a startup. Then it has decided what will be the tax exemption. Then incubation centers are a part of it. So all of this is a part of your initiative as well, 2015 initiative.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who's having any question or query? You, the floor is open for all of you to ask. No, okay. They've already presented the word of honor. Ma'am, before we just say you thanks again, just another question that popped into my mind was that as a lawyer who's working with the startups, is it like the initial starting of a startup becomes is more difficult part on the legal aspects, or the later perspective is the same?
Okay, so
how does it go? Like initially starting up is difficult in legal terms, or the later consequences which they may have in case they are not very much well versed with all the legal things, that becomes a difficult step.
So with the experience, what I can tell is the difficulty is there in both the stages, but the type of difficulty is different. For example, when I am starting up or when I'm planning to start up a business, so in the initial step, what difficulty I will face will be mostly with maybe different government employees or government authorities that I'm interacting with for licenses, or if I am interacting with different suppliers. Because right now I do not have established company. I am just planning, or I'm just proposing my idea to different founders, right? So in that case, the difficulty is presenting your idea and convincing that party to enter into a contract with you. However, once the company has been set up, at that point of time you will face a lot different sort of difficulties. Like for instance, I can tell you, while working for one of the startup, what has happened, one of the organization or one of the startup, it has entered into an MOU with one of the university to give certain online classes or certain online course. So in deciding that, there was a huge fight about whose copyright it will be, like, because the content was given by the university, the data was prepared by the online education platform. So there was a fight altogether that who will be the IP owner of that copyright. So the type of difficulty that you have after is actually more interesting than what you have before, while you are, like, working on startup. So the difficulty remains the same, but I think
True, true. I think because we also have incubation centers.
Okay.
Yeah, because we do have incubation center here in our university, and we are offering it to all the startups if they want to come, and whatever requirement is there, right? Certain funding or the space, basically, if they need it. So that's why I was little inquisitive that what all sort of, like, legal aspects come into it, because though we are from law background, but this thing is again a new thing for us to hear, that what all sort of things all of these startups they require.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for your valuable input and all your time.
Thanks so much for giving the platform, actually.
Yeah, it was really, really very informative for each one of us, and I'm sure for the students as well. And I hope we'll have you somewhere again with us also for such kind of valuable sessions. Thank you so much, Sanjana, again. And
thanks so much, Dr.
yeah, thank you from the whole team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks so much.
thank you so much.
Bye everyone.
Bye.